Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Holl. As our year-end wrap-ups continue, I'm excited to dive into the state of homebrewing in America. In a few minutes, I'll be joined by a trio of homebrewers who will share their perspective on the hobby, the larger movement, and its future. But before we get into it, I hope you'll consider supporting All About Beer. There are a number of ways you can do it, through our Patreon, through our underwriting, and through our advertising. The only way we can continue to bring you original shows like this, or the All About Beer podcast, or articles on our site, is through your support. Please visit allaboutbeer.com/support to learn more. And thanks to this episode's sponsor. Ever wanted to brew your own beer but didn't know where to start? No tubs, no tubes, and no science degree required. Skip the confusion and get straight to the fun with Pinter. Brew your own fresh beer and impress your friends with craft brews from top breweries like Appalachian Mountain Brewing. It's that easy. For this week only, you can grab the Pinter and 2 beer packets, that's 24 pints, for just $49. Plus, get free delivery when you go directly to try.pinter.com/dbtb. or use code DRINKBEER49. But hurry, stocks are almost gone for the year, and I've heard they're almost down to their last few units. Don't miss out, grab your Pinter today, and start brewing your best beer yet. Make sure you visit allaboutbeer.com for original articles, reviews, news, insights, and podcasts. Listen to shows like Brewer to Brewer and the All About Beer podcast by searching All About Beer wherever you listen to shows. You can follow All About Beer on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, and Blue Sky at All About Beer. As always, you can keep up with all of the smoked beer news and releases by checking out This Week in Rauk Beer. Search the group on Facebook or follow at TW Rauk Beer on Threads and Instagram. Glassware and apparel is available too on allaboutbeer.com/merch. And to help keep the content fresh, a few bucks goes a long way to fund writers, photographers, creators, and editors by visiting patreon.com/allaboutbeer. Depending on who you talk with, homebrewing in America had a tough year. While there's still lots of clubs going strong, some stores have closed. The National Association of Homebrewers failed to hold its annual and long-running convention, and folks in the space say that they are looking for ways to recruit new people to the rewarding hobby. As in years past, Denny Conn is here. He is a living homebrewing legend who calls Oregon home. Along with Drew Beecham, he is the co-author of Simple Homebrewing and Experimental Homebrewing, which is also the name of a podcast that they host. Beecham was unavailable to join us this year, but I'm excited to also have with us Megan Van Dyke, who says beer is community. She started homebrewing in 2008, co-founded the New Jersey-based homebrew club MASH, which is the Morris Area Society of Homebrewers, in 2013, and became a BJCP certified homebrew judge and won her first competition medal for Beer de Garde, no less, in 2014. Today, she's on the board of the Keystone Hops Homebrewing Club in Pennsylvania and directs its Keystone Hops Gives Back initiative, fostering generosity and community spirit. I'm also joined by Jim Alexander. As a homebrewer for the past 19 years, he enjoys fine-tuning his craft, brewing clean American styles and traditional German lagers. He's won numerous competition medals and has scaled up his recipes at Philadelphia area breweries Imprint, Iron Hill, and Dock Street. He's former president and current secretary of the Keystone Hops Homebrew Club in suburban Philadelphia. He's a BJCP national ranked judge and multi-time organizer of the War of the Worts, one of the largest homebrew competitions on the East Coast. And as you might hear as our conversation happens, Megan and Jim are married. Here's the conversation. Welcome to the show, to the three of you. Denny, right off the bat, I'm feeling a little bit weird that your other half isn't here. I'm sure he has a good excuse, but so much of this is now going to rest on your shoulders, and that's why I'm going to start with you. And
are we in trouble?
What's the in your mind as 2024 comes to a close? What's the state of homebrewing in America right now?
I haven't actually seen any real figures, but my impression from being online with homebrewers many hours a day is that it appears that the decline may have bottomed out.
Okay.
I, again, that's what it looks like to me.
And does that mean then the only way to go is up?
No,
Oh, okay.
it can always go down more. I mean, who knows? Maybe it's just like a temporary bottom plateau,
Oh
but
God.
we can be hopeful that it will go back up. I'm seeing some of the new brewing being driven by some of the equipment that's around these days, and I have mixed feelings on whether that's a good thing or not.
Okay. Well, I'll talk about that in just a minute. But Megan, I'll ask you the same question of what you, as an active home brewer and somebody very involved in your community, what do you see as the state of home brewing right now in the country?
For me, the state of homebrewing is as vital and urgent as ever in our communities. I'm seeing club member. I reached out to some friends in clubs from throughout the tri-state area here in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York, and hearing that the state of homebrew clubs is strong, that membership it has leveled out since the pandemic. We've lost some members, we've gained some members, but everyone is feeling very connected and still enthusiastic about the craft.
Cool. And Jim, does that square with you? Where do you see the state of things right now?
I think so. The communities, the sort of diehards that have established themselves are absolutely still brewing, and doing really fun, creative, engaging things, to keep each other there. I would say the one place of concern from my perspective is the stores. It does seem like there are closures continuing to happen. Um, so that's the one spot where I hope, Denny, that you're right, that we have bottomed out.
Yeah,
So,
well,
yeah, go ahead, Denny.
I was just going to say, I I I hope we've bottomed out. I'm not seeing like signs of like multiple closings of homebrew stores every week. I think that maybe has gotten to where it's going to be, and you still have the hardcore homebrewers there, but I don't see any sign that the numbers are increasing.
Can we talk about the brick and mortar stores for a minute? Because Jim, you brought that up, and it's something that I've been thinking about and going into this conversation where I know so much is online these days, and you can buy things online and have it delivered same day now. But there was always, in my mind, when homebrew shops were more prevalent, a comfort in being able to walk in judgment free, hopefully, and pick up the hobby, you have a conversation and then walk out with everything that you needed to kickstart the hobby, and then to go back and sort of have that in person relationship, fellowship, etc. Um, with the closure of some of these stores, and then even some of the online retailers, you know, closing up or changing their scope and everything else like that. Um, what's the current impact, and then the potential for long term impact without these brick and mortars? And that's a jump ball for whoever wants it.
I think you'll definitely see some people not want to mess with having to stockpile ingredients and order bulk to make shipping charges worth it. Like you said, John, I mean, the convenience of just being able to walk in, talk to people, figure out what you're brewing, change your recipe on the fly. I mean, that's why people do this hobby, because of these small batches and being able to tweak and adjust like that. You need to plan if you're going to be doing online ordering, and it's something that a lot of people just don't have it in them to do.
Here, here.
So, I mean, Denny, does that ring true for you? Because I mean, do you still have a local homebrew shop by you?
Yes, we have a very, very good homebrew shop here these days. The Home Fermenter, run by Jason Alderman. it's probably one of the best homebrew stores I've ever seen anywhere, and how he manages to stay in business and carry the huge amount of inventory he does is beyond me.
Well, I imagine
Uh,
it's because you're the number one customer.
yeah, right. No, actually, I'm not. You know, I tend, I don't order much online. I admit, hops from Yakima Chief. Sometimes if Jason isn't carrying the ones that I need, but most of my grain I buy from him. I try and keep him in business as much as I can because it's just too handy to have him there. Uh, that said, I do tend to buy in large quantities because I live, like 40 miles outside of town and away from any place. So, it's like when the pandemic started, I had 800 pounds of grain and 40 pounds of hops on hand and huge amounts of yeast, because that's just the way I tend to buy so that I can brew when my schedule allows me to brew and have it on hand. Um, but again, I think that the value of having a local brick and mortar homebrew shop cannot be overstated.
Megan, did you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. There's no substitution for being able to walk in the door and speak to someone who can help you, guide you toward substitutions and offer ideas, and then, is there to help see you through it, essentially. And we had a shakeup out in our neck of the woods in southeastern Pennsylvania when our local homebrew shop, Keystone Homebrew, was on the verge of being sold and put out of business. And the employees came together, saved the business, and was able to reopen it this past year out in Montgomery County. So that was a big news to our homebrew club. We were, without a home and on the road for a bit, and having that place for us to converge and, to be able to work with them has been really important for our community.
So I guess that sort of dovetails into the question that I know folks have been asking for a while now, and there's still a lot of good information that's out there. There's magazines like BYO. There's websites that exist. There's obviously podcasts that exist that talk about home brewing, and that's speaking to the faithful, or at least the curious. But the big thing is, how do you bring new people into the fold? And when you don't necessarily have these stores around, or even an event, this past year, like the Homebrew Con, where folks can get together, or taste some of those, or do hop rubbings. Denny, you're talking about Yakima Chief, ordering from them. If you don't have the opportunity to go and do hop rubbings, or taste ingredients, or to whatever it is, how do you start bringing new people into the fold? If it's bottomed out, how do you start to get that membership to start to crawl out of that hole? Megan, do you have any ideas on this?
Oh my gosh, that's the big question.
And it certainly is.
I don't think there's an easy answer. I think that like what you're talking about, like this idea of like everything was online for a while. There's this explosive growth online. And, when I think about like how social media and digital news has changed and shaped our communities, I think we're at this same kind of inflection point in like our little hobby of home brewing, where, it's like a return to in-person, one-on-one, a friend inviting a friend into to a brew day, inviting people to come to classes, like being able to talk about the beer and your experience of drinking and tasting beer as a beer judge, and to share that passion. I think that's where we are, um, you know, back on the human in-person level in many ways.
Yeah. Jim, what's your thought on that?
It's It's such a challenge, especially people new to the hobby. I tend to focus on how to bring people into club membership and how to retain them, and which is really the other half of the question, right? You need to get them in the front
Yeah.
door, and then you need to figure out how to keep them around. Um, the only thing I know is what Megan has said. It's from my perspective, it's word of mouth, it's grassroots stuff. Surely there are marketing experts that that could come up with something better. Um, but I'm kind of trying to convert new homebrewers one person at a time.
Yeah, that's about all that we can really do at this point. I mean, the AHA was so good at getting the word out and getting people to go out and evangelize even more was a great resource. And now they just barely are in existence at all. And who knows what the future holds for them. So it is a real tough job there. And not to put it all on the AHA, the
Right.
other thing that, I excuse me, the other thing that is really happening is that there's a decline in beer drinking and interest in beer overall, right? When we were at our height of home brewing, maybe like 20, 15 years ago, there was like general interest and excitement about beer everywhere. And I think that that was driving a lot of it in the homebrewing world. And John, as you well know, there's been a huge decline in that, as
Yeah.
evidenced by how many breweries have gone under, how sales have gone. And I think that contributes to the fact that, people just aren't as interested in beer in general as they used to be. And then the third thing that I've seen, remember how like 5, 10 years ago, the words maker culture were everywhere? When was the last time you ever heard anybody talk about that?
Sure.
I think that in general, there's just not as much of that kind of stuff going on as there was. I mean, which is not to say that it's gone or anything like that, but it's not ubiquitous like it was in the past. So I think those are three things really that have contributed to the decline in homebrewing, and especially the interest in beer. I don't know how you overcome that to get new people brewing again.
I mean, this has got to be cyclical. Is it cyclical, Denny?
Not not that well, living in Oregon, I kind of have a different point of view, right? um, Craft beer was huge here way before it was anywhere else in the country, and home brewing too. I mean, the Maltose Falcons just celebrated their 50th anniversary, and my club isn't far behind. So, you know, I have been seeing interest in craft beer for, geez, most of the 50 years that I have lived out here in the Northwest. 50 years. Wow. How can I be that old? You guys probably aren't even 50 years old yet.
No. No.
But well, then take it from the old man. With great age comes great wisdom. And I think I don't know if it's cyclical. I have not seen that happen, Megan. I have seen it being just on the upswing ever since I have been aware of it, which is nearly 50 years, and I have not. And we had the decline, and that's all I've seen. I haven't seen it up and down before.
Mm.
Denny,
I,
to
I,
your
do, I do know that, like, in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a decline in homebrewing that was related to the economy.
Yeah.
And then as the economy turned around and went the other way, so did homebrewing. The conventional wisdom, as imparted to me by my shop owner, is that when the economy is good, home brewing goes down because people don't have time to brew and they have money to buy beer. When the economy is bad, home brewing goes up because people are going to be brewing their own beer ostensibly to save money. We all know that doesn't happen. It's like buying a boat to save money on fish, you know. um, so I just don't know how we get people interested again, especially without the AHA being the thriving organization that it used to be to kind of drive us to get more people involved and to put the word out.
Jim, you were going to ask a question there. Jump in.
I was just thinking about Denny's point about maker culture, and I wonder, it is still around, just in a much different form, and that is so long as you can show the making of your product within the confines of a single TikTok video, which homebrewing, you cannot make beer in that amount of time, that's for sure. Like, there's a lot of patience that goes into making beer, a lot of time, and it doesn't seem like there's much of an appetite for such long-term products anymore.
And you're
Yeah,
definitely speaking to the wrong crew because I don't know what homebrewing TikTok looks like, if that exists.
yeah, I agree. I don't think I've ever seen a TikTok video. Um,
I'm pretty sure that's why Drew can't be here this afternoon because he's streaming on TikTok right now.
Mm.
I think he's doing an OnlyFans thing.
God. Okay. So Denny, you've brought this up a couple of times now, right? And there's stuff that I want to talk about membership and getting more people involved. But you've brought up the AHA and what it was versus what it is now. And I don't want to belabor this too much, but with your perspective, for those who, may not be aware, where was it in your mind and where do you see it now as the organization goes and as a long time, member and advocate and
Yeah.
participant?
Right. Yeah. I have been an AHA member since about 1999. And in 2006, I started serving on the governing committee, which I did for 16 years. Um, and it's very interesting. The very first meeting that the governing committee meeting that I went to in 2006 in Orlando, Randy Mosier was the chairman of the committee,
I've heard of him.
and yeah, right. Well, he's somebody else who's kind of faded away. Um, the big thing that we spent the entire meeting trying to deal with was how not to get the Brewers Association to kill off the AHA because we weren't making enough money. Um, and through the great leadership of Gary Glass, Kate Porter, Janice Gross, a bunch of other people back then, we were able to overcome that, and they drove membership. And again, the times were different back then. Remember, the interest in beer was increasing 25 years ago. So between that and the fact that these people were brilliant and hardworking and had great ideas, the membership started growing. We started making money, covering our expenses, and the Brewers Association was very happy with us. The AHA would go around and do rallies in various cities, breweries, where they would bring people in. And, we got a lot of members out of that, but it also came down to the fact that the rallies were expensive enough. We weren't getting enough membership to really pay for them. So those died off. And then more and more as towards the end of Gary's reign or chairmanship, um, the numbers had started going down again. The Brewers Association cut Gary and a bunch of other people out of the AHA,
Yeah.
which to my mind made the organization much less effective and only exacerbated the issues that they were having already. Um, and at this point in time, from what I hear on the grapevine, I would not be surprised to see Brewers Association cut the AHA loose completely and leave them to live or die by their own devices. Um, so it's really, really hard to say where it's going. My feeling is that if the Brewers Association gets rid of the AHA, it's not going to be a good thing for the AHA, trying to survive on their own without the Brewers Association.
Sure.
Because, it has always been so much on the line whether the AHA was making enough to at least cover their expenses or not, that I'm afraid that without help from the Brewers Association, the AHA won't be able to do that at all. If that's what happens, right?
Yeah. I mean, so one of the big things was always Homebrew Con. And this is the first year, 2014 or 2024, and quite a while, COVID, notwithstanding, that there wasn't a big get together specifically tailored for homebrewers. And
Mhm.
Jim, I know you've attended a lot of these in the past. Being locally involved in your own club, being a longtime homebrewer, what in your mind is sort of the loss when you don't have one of these big national gatherings?
Yeah, I've attended every single one since 2013, when it came here to Philadelphia. Um, and I was supposed to be in Denver this past year as well until that had to be canceled sort of at the last minute. But our club did send maybe half a dozen people out there. So it's something that's extremely important in our kind of local micro community. That event felt like the culmination of this hobby. It was a chance to celebrate who we are and what we do and realize that we're not these strange people in the Philadelphia area, that there are tons of us all over the country.
Well, I mean,
Um,
you are the strange people in the Philadelphia area, but
oh,
you're
and
then
we will
seeing
be
the
the
strange
first
people
ones to
from
say it.
rural Oregon, and
Yep.
yeah, that's
It was celebration is the best word I can use to
yeah.
describe it. It felt amazing to just designate an entire week of our lives to the travel involved. It was in San Diego in 2023.
Hmm.
Our club had upwards of 20 people fly across the country for that conference, a conference which I believe was not well attended. But you wouldn't know it by seeing all the Keystone Hops shirts walking around San Diego 2 years ago.
I like hearing that. I mean, not that, it wasn't well attended, but just that sense of community. And I mean, Megan, that's something that, we were talking about beforehand on email before we went on this, is just the importance of that community and having that gathering together. It's something I guess also to look forward to as well, right?
Yeah, when I started, was part of a group that started a homebrew club in 2013 in New Jersey,
Give them a shout out.
MASH, the Morris
Yes.
Area Society of Homebrewers. We
Near
had
and dear to my heart, that group.
you came and spoke at one of our first meetings in our first year, actually. Um,
Yeah, it
but
was
we
just
had
adding another strange guy to a room of strange folks. It was fun.
it was really fun. I still have my craft beer American cookbook.
Okay.
Um, but we had one member who had been to HomebrewCon in Philly the year before and declared it the most fun you can have wearing pants. And so we all took, as a fledgling club, took a chance and went out to Grand Rapids, I think was that the next year. And it sort of solidified and, uh, you know, concentrated how we wanted our club to look, what the values were that we wanted to have as a club. We wanted to be a learning focused. We wanted to bring in speakers. We wanted to connect with other homebrew clubs and communities. We wanted to have like a pretty competitive, supportive culture by having experimental, projects like brewers duels and, we've triangle tests and things like that, just to keep everyone brewing and, keep the brewing learning fresh. And, when I think about my like last decade, I guess, being part of a couple different homebrewing clubs, for me, like, I really think that it's a hobby that brings people together, unlike any that I've seen before. I think beer in general, I always tend to like travel and trust that I'm gonna sit down at the bar and have a good conversation with someone who's gonna, share stories and we'll be able to make connections that will improve my life. So I really appreciate homebrewing for the community aspect. And as Jim said, we've talked about homebrewing clubs and then Homebrew Con being the culmination of that. Um, and I mean, especially through the pandemic too, so many clubs um, got stronger, I think, during the pandemic because we were all alone. We
Hmm.
were all forced inside of our homes. And even if we were able to brew, we didn't have anyone to share it with without our, club connection. But I think some of that loneliness and disconnection still lingers. And the people that I think about when I walk into my homebrewing club meeting, these are all people who share something in common, who are moved to be together. And I'm really, grateful to homebrewing to be that glue.
There was some conversation earlier this year, Denny, when the AHA announced that HomebrewCon was going to be a area inside of the GABF, and there were no concrete plans announced for anything in 2025. There were a lot of bubbled up conversations that I saw on social media, on Reddit, etc. Folks reaching out to me saying, well, maybe there should just be regional, groups should band together and have their own mini AHAs or mini homebrew cons or, regional, let's bootstrap it like we did back in the day. Is that chatter still out there as far as you can tell from the deck of your command ship right there?
Yeah, very much so. And I agree with it a lot. Uh, I I miss having a national conference, right? Because I have a lot of friends who don't live around here and that I got a chance to see there. And for me, at the very least, the main purpose of going to the National Homebrew Conference, or I guess Homebrew Con, um, is to see people. It's not to drink beer. It's to see my friends that I only get to see that one time. But I really don't see that happening. And having been to a couple regional conferences, we had one here in the Pacific Northwest a few years back, put on by a group of people, and it was absolutely fantastic. It was the way the National Homebrew Conference used to be, great seminars, a small enough group so that you could see everybody, but not too small. And then since then, I've been like to the Southern California Homebrew Fest, Northern California Homebrew Fest, both of those just last year. I've been to a couple other things. And to me, the way forward is really going to be those regional conferences because that's, less of a chore to put on, although still overwhelming. After the people put on a great conference here in the Pacific Northwest, they all said, never again. If somebody else wants to do it, that's great, but I'm not doing it again. Um, you know, and I would love to see a national conference come back. And And I want to make clear also, I'm not like totally down on the AHA. Something that they just did recently that has a great impact on me is put up a new discussion forum. We started an AHA discussion forum maybe 10, 12 years ago, something like that. And the software had just become hugely outdated and stuff. And they made a commitment, spent some bucks. We have new forum software, and the forum has been reinvigorated. It's great. It's easy to use. It's easy to search. I would encourage all homebrewers who happen to be listening to this to go to the AHA discussion forum. There is such a huge repository of great information there that you can find answers to many, many homebrewing questions and dilemma by doing that. So that commitment that the AHA made has really paid off in that regard. And at one point, they were actually talking about killing the forum, but then they discovered that 30% of the traffic on the AHA website is driven there by the forum. So they figured that was a good investment to be able to upgrade it. So that's great. But I really feel like at this point, they're just kind of casting about, trying to find something that is going to work to get things back to where they were. And I'm not sure it's within their power to do that, or anybody's power. I think that in effect, it has to be maybe like a cultural shift that makes it happen.
Megan or Jim, have there been conversations that you've been involved in or that you're hearing from other local clubs about anything regional here on the East Coast?
It does come up, yeah. Every once in a while, we'll hear that one of the club's presidents have reached out to us to try and drum up a little support for it. I don't think it's gotten past that step, but I think everyone is kind of jonesing for an opportunity for everyone to get together again. Um, in the meantime, we've seen a little uptick in cross club mixing, going to each other's meetings,
Oh, fun.
having meetups kind of outside our normal monthly meeting cycle, where different clubs can get together and swap beer and swap stories. Um, so slowly getting to that point, but nothing as big as a regional conference, not yet.
Okay.
I mean, at one point there was a talk of like regional, like presidents all coming together of all the different homebrew clubs in the Mid-Atlantic area, but that all is so much work. I think what Denny said, who can take that on, who has the wherewithal to take that on and
Yeah.
sustain that, definitely, I know a lot of the clubs have challenges hosting our homebrew competitions. I think in terms of the homebrew competitions that we're putting on, the entries are coming back up from, they were down during the pandemic, they're coming back up, but it's harder and harder to find judges. Um, so you need that group of people who are, really invested and uh, in it to make something like that happen.
Yeah. And it's been my experience that a lot of the very serious homebrewers, even in leadership positions in their clubs, also typically have fairly high demanding day jobs. Like there's a certain, section of folks who are serious about homebrewing and then also have pretty technically minded jobs or, high profile jobs or, demanding jobs. And I mean, maybe I'm painting with too broad a brush there, but so adding, another layer on, I think might be too big of an ask for some folks. I want to take a quick pause here to pay some bills, pay the mortgage, and then we'll be right back. Ever wanted to brew your own beer but didn't know where to start? No tubs, no tubes, and no science degree required. Skip the confusion and get straight to the fun with Pinter. Brew your own fresh beer and impress your friends with craft brews from top breweries like Appalachian Mountain Brewing. It's that easy. For this week only, you can grab the Pinter and 2 beer packets, that's 24 pints, for just $49. Plus, get free delivery when you go directly to try.pinter.com/DBTB or use code DRINKBEER49. But hurry, stocks are almost gone for the year, and I've heard they're almost down to their last few units. Don't miss out. Grab your pinter today and start brewing your best beer yet. And we are back. Megan, Jim, Denny. Denny, you earlier brought up equipment in the homebrew space, which I'm sort of curious about. You know, and this is sort of for all three of you, but what sort of advancements have you seen for the home brewer when it comes to either ingredients or technology or equipment that you're using? I mean, I still think of the Mr. Beer kit because that's how outdated I am. But are there is it easier to be a home brewer these days with equipment that's out there? And if so, what's exciting to you three?
I think yes and no. The biggest thing that's happened in homebrewing in the last 5, 10 years is the flood of all-in-one homebrewing equipment, right? Where you mash, boil, and everything all in one piece of equipment. It's an absolutely great way to brew. I have several. It makes brewing easier. It makes brewing more fun for me because fun is why I brew, right? If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. It makes cleanup a lot faster and easier, which also makes it more fun. The downside of that, though, is that people who have never brewed before are going out and buying these things and expecting them to, in effect, make the beer for them. And you can't believe how many people I see online who have bought one of these things and they have absolutely no idea I mean, they follow the directions. Yeah, you get this much grain, you put it in, you do this. And then the results are terrible because they are assuming that just having one of these pieces of equipment is all you need to make beer, and they don't understand anything about the beer, right? And you suggest information sources to them. They go, "Well, I don't like to read what's on YouTube." Well, the trouble with YouTube is that so much of that information is not vetted at all. You go out and buy a copy of Palmer's How to Brew, and you know that there was a technical editor who went through everything. There are, people looking at that book. So I think that the equipment is great, but what isn't so great is people not having an understanding of how brewing works and then getting disappointing results and going, man, I just spent all this money on this piece of equipment and my beer is absolute crap. Then you have the people who go out who hear things that they should be doing without any understanding of what they are and trying to do things. The big thing these days is oxygen infiltration into your beer, right? The homebrewers are going to extreme lengths to try and keep oxygen from ever touching their beer. These fancy, expensive little stainless steel things so you can dry hop your beer without ever opening the fermenter and stuff, without understanding that really that is completely unnecessary. There's just too much. I mean, in a way, and maybe it's due to the internet and social media, right? Maybe there's too much information. There's this great meme that goes around about how we thought that once we had access to all the information in the world, it would solve all of our problems, and we all know that pretty much it went the other way. So I think that the equipment is a real plus if you understand how to use the equipment and don't think that just buying the equipment is going to make you a home brewer. There's still a personal commitment that you have to make.
Megan, Jim.
I think Denny nailed it with the all-in-ones. I mean, that's how you brew these days. The days of propane burners and multiple kettles or kegs that you've converted into kettles and welded a bunch of random fittings onto, those days are gone. Megan and I asked some of our club members their kind of general thoughts on home brewing in preparation for this. And one of them, the first point he said was home brewing has never been easier. The all-in-ones do so much for you. I think to Denny's other point, Denny, there've always been people who didn't know what the heck they're doing in this hobby. The all-in-ones haven't changed that. Um,
No, no, but people used to like start with an extract brew and
sure, sure, yeah.
learn the basics, learn how brewing worked, learn about fermentation, all that stuff. And I just do not see that happening anymore. I see people going out and buying an all-in-one and go, okay, I put the grain in here and then I'm gonna have beer. And you know, they they make lousy beer. They just don't get the whole picture. They don't take it step by step and learn. And, for a small number of people, that works absolutely fine. But for a greater number of people, uh, they're just going to be frustrated.
I think that fits in with kind of the generational gap. Do younger millennials and Gen Z have the patience for this hobby, the patience to learn all that stuff? And maybe that's an answer to why it's so tough to get people into this hobby.
Yeah, I mean, that could be. I hate to generalize a
Sure.
group and diss them, but I don't necessarily disagree with you either, Jim. And I think aging plays into it on both ends. Take myself for instance. Uh, I'm 72 years old now. I don't judge anymore because I never know on what day my senses are going to be working. Right? Some days I can smell and taste. Some days I can't smell and taste. Um, Brewing, physical things are more difficult for me than they used to be. In that way, the all-in-ones have been a great boon for me because they're easy to use, they're easy to clean up. I can crank out a 6-gallon batch of all grain beer in 2 and 3/4 hours, and that includes all the cleanup. And that's the kind of thing that encourages me to brew. But at the same time, as I age, I can't drink as much as I used to either. I'm having health issues related to drinking. For all you people there that say beer is healthy, uh, you know, and maybe if you don't drink too much of it for 25 years continuously, like me, it is. But you know, but I think that's one of the reasons you're seeing fewer people in the hobby, and one of the reasons also it's necessary to try and draw more people in to make up for that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
all
Sorry,
that
Megan, go ahead,
said,
please.
I want to say the brewing ethos in our house has been keep it simple. And so we still do have a propane burner and a very simple tower system that Jim built many years ago that we're only just getting around to putting in an electric system in our basement and building out that dedicated space. Partly because, we just bought a house and so it takes time to get to that place, but I think, I mean, I'm in the keep it simple, grow slowly camp that, I guess is in a different place than a lot of the new brewers today. But
Yeah.
I'm very much with you. I mean, I wrote a book called Simple Homebrewing, right? Um,
yeah.
but everybody gets to define simple for themselves.
Mm,
For me, there is nothing simpler than using an all-in-one system. Both in terms of the use and the results. But again, by the time I started using an all-in-one, I'd been brewing for over 20 years, and I know how brewing works, and that is the real key. So it's like you say, whatever gets you there is a good thing. Whatever you find is the way that you like to brew, as long as you're brewing, whether it's extract. In the Simple Homebrewing book, I outline an all grain method with a 20-minute mash and a 20-minute boil. So you can crank out a 3-gallon all grain batch in probably an hour and a half. Um, but it's whatever works for you. You need to go out there and investigate. And I'm afraid that some of the new brewers out there who are just buying the all in ones are just buying them because somebody says, oh, you get one of these and you can make beer.
Yeah. Something that's been occurring to me as you guys have been talking about this is the larger beer industry, the craft space. I know there's the argument that could be made that it hurt homebrewing for a while because um, anybody who was going to get into homebrewing with the idea of going pro one day could just walk down the street to their local brewery, get a job washing kegs, and then eventually learn how to do it themselves and go on from there. But one of the things that has been rattling around in my brain recently was I had a conversation with Wayne Wambles, formerly of Cigar City, now of Griffin and Sphinx in North Carolina, where he spent a year or so just messing around on his homebrew kit, trying to perfect recipes that would go into his new venture one day. And that return to the roots of homebrewing for professional brewing has been in my mind where I've been thinking like, wouldn't it be cool for this newer generation of brewers that's going to start coming up in the next couple of years, to invest in the hobby, to get into it, to really hone in those processes, so that they can learn how to be the best brewers, for themselves and their eventual business, as opposed to maybe learning from somebody else who is just doing an okay enough job. Have you all been having conversations with anybody thinking about going pro these days? And if so, what have those conversations been like?
It's been ages since I've run into a home brewer who wants to turn into a commercial brewer. Most of them have too much sense for that. Uh, I mean, Drew and I used to say that we were probably the only two homebrewers in the world who didn't want to go commercial, and I think that there are a lot more of them now. Of course, not all. I mean, you still see people go, "Oh, my friends like my beer, so I want to open a brewery." Uh, but it is not nearly every home brewer like it used to be. At least the ones I'm familiar with.
I
Yeah,
will
Megan,
add a
Jim.
counterpoint to that and say that our club has actually had a couple people go pro in the
Well, I
last
mean,
few years.
so has my club too, but again, that's a small cross section.
Sure.
Megan, I saw you were
Yeah,
going to jump in there.
yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I've seen the same thing that there's there are several people who left MASH and started breweries, just at the time that New Jersey finally shifted their their brewing laws. And there's a
Hmm.
few people who work in the industry um, here in Pennsylvania, and the Keystone Hops Homebrew Club, who came to the club, got you know got better as home brewers, and then were able to work their way up. But for the most part, the homebrewing, I would agree with Denny that the homebrewing community doesn't necessarily want to go pro. It's something that is a passion.
I like that. Um, as you start to think about, I guess just some of those, to sort of start to tie everything together that we've been talking about. It still ultimately comes back to after everything is over, you have beer in your glass. Um, but Denny, you brought up that people are drinking less beer. There's obviously other categories that are out there these days. Are anybody in your various clubs or in the conversations that you're having, are they branching out into other beverages as well? Or has that entered into the conversations that you all are having?
I mean, you always have people at homebrew clubs making a bunch of weird beverages just because they can, right? So, branching out. I mean, I don't know if branching out is just making an occasional one-off batch or not. But definitely in our club, there are people who make all kinds of stuff. I mean, I just finished my yearly batch of cider, for instance. Uh, because we have apple trees and the cider press and all that kind of stuff. So I do that, but I don't know if that's really branching off from beer. But yeah, I think that in general, homebrewers will make just about any kind of fermented beverage that catches their fancy.
Meg and Jim, have you guys seen
Yeah.
interest
Yep.
in other beverages?
I agree, Denny. Just the nature of the home brewer seems to be the stranger it is and the fewer people that have tried this before, the more likely it is that they're going to pick up that mantle and run with it.
And you just
Um,
shake your head and go, okay, guy, go right
I
ahead.
mean, some people pull off some amazing things. You know, incredible meads are coming out of our club. Cider has always been popular. Even within the beer space, people becoming specialists in wild fermentations, or we have one guy who's become a specialist in historical styles of beer and is, bringing things like 1910 Whitbread Stout to our club meetings, or Cottbusser.
That's
So
fun.
yeah, yeah. So there's always room to play in home brewing, and you will absolutely find the people who are willing to play in that space.
I love it. Um, so as you think about 2025, this is a jump ball for or actually to each one of you. Um, what is a style of beer that you haven't brewed either before or in a while that you'd really like to give a go to making in the new year? Megan?
Oh gosh, Jim, I don't think you're going to hear a new beer style coming out of Jim and my household. I
Okay.
think I think it'll probably be, more brown ale, pale ale, uh,
There's no argument for me.
yeah,
That's more
IPAs,
Lagers.
brown ales. Yeah.
lagers, yeah.
So nothing crazy. Okay. Or nothing that hasn't been in the rotation for a
I
while.
will I will give a shout out to a beer that I did just brew that I had been wanting to do for over a decade.
Okay.
And that was a clone of Unibrew's La Fin du Monde, which is a beer I'm guessing we all know and love.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yes, very
Um,
much so.
that particular strain of yeast that Unibrew uses, me and some other club members have led the charge every year at Homebrew Con to petition the yeast companies to re-release that strain of yeast. And after countless years of hounding, they relented last year. And our club ordered many, many packets of the Canadian Belgian yeast, and I was able to make that beer, I guess, about 4 months ago, and it was glorious.
That's
Can,
great,
can
man.
can I ask, are you setting any aside for an extended period of time?
That's a
Or
beer
is
that
it
I
all
can
done?
do. It's high enough alcohol. Unfortunately, it got drank.
Oh, okay.
I've
I don't
got
feel like I don't feel like that's a beer that would really benefit from aging, though.
So
probably not
I
too
I had
much,
a
but
10-year-old bottle of it once and it was incredible.
Oh, that's good. Good to know.
Like just gobsmacked me with how good it was 10 years on.
Right. Cool.
So
That's
that's the only reason I asked. Yeah, it's
yeah, it won't
yeah.
be this batch, unfortunately.
Okay. But I love that. And I mean that's such a I mean that's a beer that I think we all, thought about all the time, and I haven't thought about that beer in quite some time. So
And
I love that you're keeping it alive.
it goes against everything that I ever really brew, which is very clean ales and clean lagers. So to do a spiced triple is very, very much outside my comfort zone.
I love that. Denny, what about you for the new year? Any
yeah.
fun brews planned?
Every brew is a fun brew, John. If it wasn't
Okay.
fun, I wouldn't be doing it. But in terms of new exotic styles, man, I did that 25 years ago, and I have pretty much settled into a few styles that I know that I'm going to love, a few specific recipes even. And it's interesting, I keep all these little spiral notebooks when I brew. Besides using a computer to figure recipes, I keep spiral notebooks, and I'm up to about 12 or 15 of them now. And when I'm brewing a beer, I look back through them to look, and see what the recipe was the last time I brewed it. And it turns out that more often than not, I'm brewing these beers again almost a year to the day after I brewed them before. And it's not by
That
any
cyclical
plan.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just about this time of year. I think this kind of beer sounds good. So basically, I make a lot of IPA because that's pretty much the only beer my wife likes. If it doesn't have 70 IBUs, she's not interested. Uh, I mean, I make a lot of German Pilsner, and
Mhm.
I make a lot of triple and occasionally some quadruple, and those are pretty much what I brew these days. And I don't, at this point, I don't have any plans to do anything else because those are the beers that I want to drink.
And that's still the fun thing about homebrewing is, brew the beers you want to drink that you want to make.
Obviously,
Well, this has been fascinating for me to hear from you guys on what's happening on the ground, what's happening, in the larger national scene, and again, not being a home brewer, but interested in what is happening in that space. Thanks for doing what you do. Thanks for keeping things going and keeping people interested and working to find new ways to bring people into the fold. And I hope it works out in 2025. And hopefully we can chat again this time next year. Just like Denny's brews, it just bubbles up at this time of year every year. But Denny, Jim, Megan, thanks so much for being on the show this week. I really appreciate your time and your insights.
thanks for the invite, John. I really appreciate it. Nice to meet you, Megan and Jim.
Yep. Thank you, John. It's not all doom and gloom here in the home brewing world. There's some really, really cool stuff happening.
Yep.
And you're
I
welcome
like that.
back anytime, John.
Love it. I'm due for a Pennsylvania visit. As I mentioned a few weeks back, we're now 5 years into the show, and I want to make sure that you're getting the most out of it. So how do we make the show better? What do you want? Do you have questions, comments, guest suggestions? It's easy. You can email me. It's John Holl, JOHNHOLL, at allaboutbeer.com, and I honestly do my best to respond to every email. The only way we can keep doing this show, our other shows, pay writers for original content, is with your help. Please visit allaboutbeer.com/support to learn more. A reminder, please go visit allaboutbeer.com. You can check out our podcast page, the merch page, read great new content, as well as the archives, which go all the way back to 1979. Follow All About Beer on social media at All About Beer. And before we go, here is a word from this week's sponsor. Ever wanted to brew your own beer but didn't know where to start? No tubs, no tubes, and no science degree required. Skip the confusion and get straight to the fun with Pinter. Brew your own fresh beer and impress your friends with craft brews from top breweries like Appalachian Mountain Brewing. It's that easy. For this week only, you can grab the Pinter and 2 beer packets, that's 24 pints, for just $49. Plus, get free delivery when you go directly to try.pinter.com/dbtb or use code DRINKBEER49. But hurry, stocks are almost gone for the year, and I've heard they're almost down to their last few units. Don't miss out. Grab your Pinter today and start brewing your best beer yet. Steal This Beer has new episodes every Monday. The BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. And check out probrewer.com each week for original articles from the All About Beer team. As for this show, Nate Schweber does our music, Jeff Quinn designed our logo, and I'm John Holl. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'll be back again to drink beer and to think beer.